Salvete omnes, this is Dr. Z. Welcome back to week 2 of Latin quarantine activities. Indeed, those of you who are my students probably notice right away that my voice is lower than normal. That is because I have a cold. How did this happen? It is something of a medical mystery since I've been in essentially self-imposed isolation with my family for the last 17 days. So it's likely a combination of stress and anxiety, like everybody else. I wish that I could be with you. I became a teacher so that I could stand in front of a classroom and talk with people and talk with my students, not so that I could sit in front of a computer screen and slowly die. Anyway, that was supposed to be a joke, but I recognize that it was probably not a good one. But then again, most of mine are not very good at all. So, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. At any rate, this week, our big idea, our big essential question is, what is the relationship between Latin and English? And in order to explore that, I'm going to give you guys a choice of doing two different projects. One is an arbor linguae, and the other would be a project really looking at what English would look like without Latin in it. That one's perhaps a little bit more complicated, and I want to take an opportunity to look at both. So let's do that now. Both of these are going to be available on your Google Classroom. Let's take a look at arbor linguae first. Okay, so this is an activity that I did probably, I don't know that I have done it probably since around 2013 or 2014, but I still like it, and here's how it works. So, salvete omnes, when we focus on our readings in Latin, we often find ways to preview vocabulary and make connections between the meaning of new Latin words and their English derivatives. Obviously, if we can make a connection between Latin and English, we do, and often that not only improves our English vocabulary, but that'll improve our ability to retain the Latin word. So when we see ambulo, for instance, we see ambulo ambulare, which means to walk. If we can recognize that words like amble in English, ambulatory, ambulans, all have something to do with walking, then this is going to increase our ability to remember the Latin word. Of course, we could go beyond, and we can in class have our discussions about, well, what would the word ambulance be in German, words like Krankenwagen, things like that. Anyway, now, while we usually just look at a few examples of how the Latin word goes into English. But now, our objective is to go beyond that. That's really what creating an arbor linguae is, a tree of language, right? A language tree. It's an attempt to see just how many English derivatives can stem from a single Latin root word. That's the goal, okay? So the radix of your tree will be one of the 5 common Latin words. I'm going to let you guys pick. You can choose verto, vertere, which means to turn. You can choose capio, capere, which means to capture or to seize. Sedeo, sedere, which means to sit. Fero, fere, which means to bring or to carry or to bear. Or facio, facere, which is to make or to do. Okay, so when we're using our roots, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for specific English words that have parts of the Latin verb in it. For instance, most words in English that have either a VERT or a VERS have something to do with verto, vertere. They have some part of their root that has to do with turning. Most words in English that have either a cap, kep, or kip in them have something to do with capturing, grabbing, or seizing. Most English words with a sed, sid, or ses have something to do with sitting down. Most English words with a fair, or believe it or not, a lot, have something to do with bringing or carrying. And this is because the word pharaoh, when it goes into the past tense, if you want to say something has been carried, the form of the adjective is going to be latus, which is why we have the word transfer and translate. Those words are linguistically connected. And then finally, the verb facio, facere, to make or to do. In English, most words that have a FAC, FEC, FIC, or simply end in the letters FY have something to do with making or doing. And this FY suffix is essentially a contraction of the word facere. If you horrify something, you make it scared. Just similarly, if you terrify something, you make it scared. That's the phi is the facere. That's making something. So almost every time we have in English the word that ends in fy, it actually has something to do with facio. Okay, so here's how we begin. What I want you to do is to choose one of these Latin words. You have some 5 choices. Whereas in the past, before there was a lot of interweb, we used to do this using a dictionary. Now I think we can do it in a more efficient way, where we're using a lot of online tools. And one of the online tools that you may or may not be familiar with, for those of you who do a lot of Scrabble, etc., is called morewords.com. So what I want you to do is to choose a Latin word, then go to morewords.com. Use the search parameters to find words containing what you're looking for. So, for instance, if you're looking for English derivatives from the Latin specto, spectare, which is one of the ways to say to look or to see, what you'll do is you'll end up wanting rather to search for words containing spec. You'll want to find words with something like a spec. And once you do that, you'll be perhaps surprised at what you find. Let me pull up here we go. Let me pull up more words. morewords.com, and if we search for words SPEC, click search, scroll down to find words containing SPEC, and we have 352 words found. If you want to look at all of them per page, just click on all. Okay, wow. Anti-speculation, anti-speculative, aspect, aspects, aspectual, bespectacled, kenospecies, right? These are so many of these different words. Now, how do we tell whether these words come from the right root or not? That's a little bit more complicated. What we'll have to do is we'll actually have to click on them perhaps more than once, or go into dictionary.com and double check. I'm really not familiar with the word seno or kenospecies, so let's actually do that one. Let's go to dictionary.com and go ahead and open that up. And let's type in seno, S-P-E-C-I-E-S. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay, a group of different species, the individuals of which produce partially fertile hybrids when crossbred. Well, that is a really practical word for us to understand in genetics. And if we go down, we find the first recorded time is 1920-1925. Species, if we click that, what we'll do is we'll go down a little bit further. Species, a more familiar word. Yep, Latin species, appearance, form, equivalent to specere or conspicere, spectare. It comes from the root. Okay, so a seno or a kenospecies is one of the words that we could potentially use. All right. Great. So once we compile a list of English words, I want you to make sure to include the weird ones like seno or kenospecies. Double check the ones that you're unsure of to make sure they come from your root, and that's what I just showed you how to do. In the past, I know that my students who've done Wertere, for instance, their search of VERS will often turn up particularly weird words. I think the weirdest one is hemi-demi-semi-quavers. This is the technical term for a 64th note in music. So that's, I mean, there would be 64 of them in an entire bar. 16 of them make up a quarter. The word has VERS in it, but it's not related to Wertere. You would know that if you type hemi-demi-semi-quavers into dictionary.com, you scroll down to word origin, and you'll get hemi and demi-semi-quaver. But just as I did, you're not done. You'll need to click on demi-semi-quaver to find out more. Eventually, you'll find that it comes from Middle English, a blend of quake and waver, and it's not related to Latin. Is it a hilarious word? Absolutely. Does it come from Wertere? No. So you can't use it. Okay? All right. So if you're interested in doing this arbor linguae, here's what you would share with me. Okay. How you choose to organize your tree is going to be up to you. Students in the past have organized derivatives by actual branches. Some people have given me alphabetized lists. Some people have grouped words by prefixes or suffixes. People have made PowerPoints. Nobody really makes prezis anymore, but that's also an option. Some people illustrate theirs by hand. Some people try to do performances where, I don't know, out of a piñata, the words might drop out or burst out of a balloon. It's totally up to you. Bottom line is, a successful project will have more than 50 English derivatives and fewer than 100. I don't need this to be exhausted. Separately, as a question on Google Classroom, I'll ask you guys what were the 3 strangest, the funniest, longest words you learned as a result of the activity. So I look forward to seeing what it is that you guys can create. Which brings us to our next possible activity, which is rewriting the Constitution. Okay, this is another project that I haven't done for a couple years, but I really enjoyed when I did, because it gets you thinking not about necessarily the relationship between Latin and English, but really what English would look like had it never been influenced by Latin at all. Okay, so here's the setup. Let's imagine this ridiculous situation. You have been approached by a group of individuals who wish to create a new country and would like to use the Constitution of the United States as a model for their own. However, the people suffer from an extremely rare visual dysplasia. They cannot see or read any words that have Latin roots. Therefore, when you show them the preamble to the Constitution, which reads, and you may be familiar with this already, I hope so, "We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." All right, to these visual dysplasia people, the Constitution looks like this. "We of America, in, to, amor, for the welfare, and." You guys get the point. You have been entrusted with the task of rewriting a section of the Constitution using only words that are not derived from Latin. Okay, you must identify words in your section of the Bill of Rights which have Latin roots, and you've got to replace them with ones that do not. That's the task. Okay. So how do I do this, is what presumably you're asking. All right, here's what we do. First, you need to determine which English words have Latin origins. A quick way to tell is really the longer the word, the more likely it is to come from Latin. To my knowledge, about 90% of the words in English that have 3 syllables or more come from Latin. So if it's long, chances are you're going to need to replace it. Shorter words are often a little bit more complicated. So for instance, looking up words you're unsure of, again, use dictionary.com. The goal isn't to look up the word as if you don't know it. The goal is really to find the word origin. So here's what you would find if you looked up the word order. If you look up the word order, you might be wondering, does this come from Old English, Middle English, whatever? You'd find that, okay, so it's first attested sometime between the years 1175, 1225. The Middle English was order. Ordrin was a verb. It came from Old French, which itself came from Latin ordin, as an ordo, ordinis, okay, or ordinare, to row or to rank something, some kind of an arrangement. So bottom line is, order you can't use. You've got to come up with something else. Okay. Here are all the words that come from a Latin root in the preamble, the one that I just read. People, from populus. United, from any form of unus, being one. State, anything from either statio or stare, meaning to stand. America is named after America Vespucci, so that's technically Italian. That's not Latin. In order, okay, so that's ordo, right? Form, a forma. A perfect, perfectus. Union, unio. Establish, okay, that's from like a stabilire or stare. Justice, justitia. Ensure. The word ensure, that's interesting. That's a little bit more complicated too. Let's look that one up and practice figuring out how we would know about ensure. So we'll take up, pecies. Insure, great. And we've got ensure, verb, great. What we have to do, that doesn't give us the information we need. We've got to go down further. Okay, Origin of ensure, late Middle English, a variant of ensure. Click there. Okay, we've got to go down a little further. Ensure, okay, origin, Middle English, Anglo-French. We're getting closer, ensure. How about just the word sure? Going down a little bit further, we've got, there it is, 1300 to 1350, Middle English, Middle French, Old French, sur, Latin, securus. Okay, so the word ensure comes from the Latin word securus, which means secure. So that's not a word that you can use. Again, that's why this can be kind of complicated, but it can also be a lot of fun too, because really it's a lot of detective work. Okay. At any rate, we have ensure, domestic, something from domos, tranquilitas, tranquility, tranquilitas, provide, providere, common, communis, defense, defensor, defendo, promote, anything with movere is to move. Okay, general, genus, secure, securus, liberty, libertas, posterity, posteritas, to ordain, again, that actually is something to do with ordo, establish, we already did that, constitutio, united, and states. Fine. Okay. So I think the tricky part is adding a word or a group of words that don't come from Latin but still actually keeps the same sense. So you could probably just replace a word for a word, but that won't make the Constitution make any sense at all. Okay? So for example, the word people comes from Latin, and you could replace it with folk or clan or kin or mass or mob or guys, all of which don't come from Latin. You can't replace it with community, nation, population, society, citizens, persons, or tribe, all of which do come from Latin. Okay? What you'll end up with is something like this once you work at it. We, the folk of the banded together lands of America, so that we might make a better fellowship. I have no idea why I'm doing an accent. It just feels right. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with it. Make laws, have no war at home, guard everyone with lots of shields, foster broad-ranging welfare, and bind the blessings of freedom to ourselves and our offspring, do allot and ground this deed for the banded together lands of America. Yes. Okay, you guys get the point. So your final product shared via Google Classroom must include a couple things. A copy of your original passage, a new non-Latin version of your passage, really those two things. If you want to do this project, I think the best way to divide it up is this. If your last name ends in either A through H, I want you to do the first through the fourth amendments. The first three are short. If your last name ends in J through P, I want you to do the fourth and fifth amendments. And if your last name ends in Q through Z, you can do 6, 7, and 8. And you'll note that in the document that I give you, you have in the Bill of Rights the first 8 amendments. Well, the Bill of Rights, of course, goes through the first 10, but the first 8 will be what we'll be working on. First Amendment, freedom of religion, speech, press, etc. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Third Amendment, quartering of soldiers. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. Fifth Amendment is a lot about law, due process, double jeopardy, the inability to self-incriminate. Sixth Amendment is more about the rule of law and the trial by jury, especially in criminal law. Seventh Amendment has more to do with civil law. And Eighth Amendment is cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, great. Again, as always, I look forward to seeing what it is that you guys can create, and I'm excited to know which one you guys find more compelling. If you guys have any questions for me, you can always feel free to email me and ask. But in any case, I'll be checking in with you throughout the week, and I wish you the best. Best of luck. Bona fortuna omnibus. Valete.